You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from Season 1. Finding details about this episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present results in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. At first, I heard of it at an event where David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about this episode, and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. The episode's production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labeled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart's production code to hide the latter's existence. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this will cause them to do anything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd and eventually had the chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem too upset that I followed him, probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode, though, all color drained from his face and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me about any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather say not what it was, for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser, and it came into a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text and a download link. I clicked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, though, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other normal episode, but it had very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal. By the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier and Marge seemed depressed. Lisa seemed anxious and Bart seemed to have a genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around as you'd expect. However, the plane was about 50 feet off the ground and Bart broke a window of the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of The Simpsons would represent life, and that death turned things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table crying. The crying went on, and it got more pained and sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, but you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out as they were stretching and blurring, and they looked like deformed shadows with the random bright colors thrown on them. There were faces looking in the window, flashing in and out, so you were never really sure what they looked like. The crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying that 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletal thin. still sitting at the table. There were no signs of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and they walked to the cemetery. The houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave of Bart, Bart's body was just lying there in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually, they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to the summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw. You can't even tell what Homer was saying. The camera zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had even heard of in 1989. Some of them haven't even been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpsons family on their couch, like in the intros, but all had drawn in hyper-realistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me after watching this episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars, but there's something odd about most of the ones who hadn't died yet. All of their death dates are listed the same date.